Hi everyone, my name is Abi Gatling, and in this episode of Creativity Uncovered, I want to talk about ham. I know this is a bit of a strange one, but yes, ham. Now, before you think that I've switched this podcast over to being a cooking show, I want you to stick with me because I heard this story the other day about ham. And I think it might just give you a little bit of a fresh perspective on your own creative habits. So if you're new here, welcome. This is Creativity Uncovered, and this is a podcast where I dive into how everyday people find inspiration, solve problems, and expand their imagination. And my goal for this podcast is that it will bring you some tried and true ways for you to be able to tap into your own creativity whenever you need it the most. Now, let's talk about that ham story. It's a bit of a weird one to start with. But the ham story is this old tale, and it starts with this woman who is just a wonderful cook. And whenever she was preparing a meal for her family, in specifically her Sunday roast, her classic Sunday roast, before she put this ham into the oven, she would chop off the end of it. And then she would put it in the pan, and then she'd put it in the oven, and that was the start of her process. She did this for her entire life, and her kids saw her doing this every single Sunday without fail. And it was up until a day where her daughter finally, the curiosity got the better of her, and she asked her mum about this, particular peculiar habit that she had of cutting the end off the ham. So she said, "Mum, why do you always cut the end off the ham?" And the mother paused and was like, "You know what? I've never really thought about it. That's just how my mum did it. And that's how I do it." So the next time this woman saw her own mother, so the grandmother, she asked her about it and said, "Ma, why do you cut the end off the ham?" And the grandma laughed and she said, "Oh, I didn't know you did that. I only cut the end off my ham because my oven was too small to fit the whole thing in." And I just love this story because it is such a funny description of habits and people's habits, the things that we just do without thinking, the things that we do because that's how it's always been done. Because sometimes we do things and it served a purpose at that time, but then over time it doesn't actually serve that purpose. It served a purpose for the grandmother because she didn't have an oven big enough to fit in this baked ham. It didn't actually serve a purpose for the mum because her oven potentially was big enough. And so it just kind of reminds me that sometimes we can get boxed in by these little routines and unspoken rules. And if we're doing that in our life, it's likely that we're doing that in our creative practices and, other habits as well. And so what if we actually ask the question that the daughters said, why do you do that? Why are we doing that? If we started to sort of examine ourselves and examine our habits and ask ourselves these questions, would we perhaps look at our habits with fresh eyes and fresh perspectives? So I guess this story and the reason for bringing it up in the podcast is that I'm sort of proposing that we do that. We do that to each other and we do that to ourselves. When we sort of examine our own ham cutting habits and ask ourselves, is there anything that we're doing currently that we could potentially challenge or change or just question? Just question why. Because creativity can often spring up in surprising ways. But it can also hide and be, shoved to the side because of these rituals and these habits that we do. Not all rituals and habits are bad. Some are really great for fueling creativity. A lovely morning walk with your dog, or listening to a pump up playlist, or, writing with your absolute favorite pen. All these things are great habits that can spark your creativity to come out. But other times there are habits that actually can limit us and can limit us without even realizing it. Maybe you have this habit of talking to yourself negatively, and, you're saying, I don't draw because, I'm not an artist, or I can't write stories because I'm just not a good writer. I'm, more logical. I don't have a great imagination. And those things that we're saying to ourselves are actually a habit. They're self-talk that if we say it enough times, we'll actually believe it ourselves, and it will stop us from doing things. And if we just allow these habits just to sneak out like that without us questioning it, we will believe it, and we can inadvertently be cutting our creativity off and stifling our creativity, and we haven't even taken the time to question why. And, I'll be honest as well, like, I have my own hand moments all the time. For example, I used to think that I needed to carve out giant chunks of time to be creative. And that stopped me from exploring my creativity and exploring my artistic creativity in that sense. I don't have enough time to finish a painting, so I'm not going to start a painting. I don't have enough time to write a story, so I'm not going to start my story. But the truth is that you can actually sneak little bits of creativity in throughout your life in little moments. You don't have to finish the creative act. You just have to start the creative act. And so the idea is that I needed hours and hours and hours to actually do this creative ritual or this creative habit. That was just something I picked up along the way, and I didn't question it for a long time. And the result was I stopped being creative in my everyday life. And once I realized that and I questioned that, it's actually been like letting go of this thing that's been holding me back a bit. And it's a fresh start. And now I just see the opportunities to snag little moments of creativity when I have them, seizing the opportunities as they come. So I guess today I just wanted to share that story with you because it might spark a question or two in your mind. And I'd like to challenge you. I'd like to encourage you to think about some habits that may be in your life that could potentially be limiting your creativity. Maybe it's a small one. Maybe it's a big one, like self-talk. But whatever it is, just try and look at it with fresh eyes and maybe see if that habit or that ritual still serves you. It may not, and it may be one to put to bed. And, but who knows? Maybe the end of your ham isn't actually necessary at all. And you're examining these habits and they may not serve you. And so stop cutting it off. Stop cutting off the end of the ham. I think I need to retire the ham. The ham story. I've said ham too many times in one episode. But look, I would love to hear from you if you have experienced any of these kind of why moments and realize you're just doing something out of habit that really isn't serving you. And I'd love to hear, like, what are the things that you're doing out of habit that just might be ready for a little bit of a shake-up. If you're comfortable sharing, please do get in touch and let me know, because I think it's a really wonderful thing where we can bring these moments to light together, because the likelihood is that if you're feeling that way or you've experienced that, someone else out there is doing that as well. So remember the ham. Don't cut the ham if you don't need to. Well, thank you to tuning into this brief episode of Creativity Uncovered today. I hope that this little story just serves as a little prompt for you to reflect on your creative habits and potentially make some small changes that could help bring your creativity to life a little more in the day-to-day. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, I hope that this helps you summon your creativity. And I look forward to sharing another story with you next time. Take care. If you've made it this far, a huge thank you for your support and tuning into today's episode. Creativity Uncovered has been lovingly recorded on the land of the Cubby Cubby people, and we pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. This podcast has been produced by my amazing team here at Crisp Communications, and the music you just heard was composed by James Gatling. If you liked this episode, please do share it around and help us on our mission to unlock more creativity in this world. You can also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episode releases.